hopefully I'll be able to shed a little bit of light on what's going on in the solar industry by way of the example of SunPower. So SunPower, at a glance, is a vertically integrated solar energy company. That means we do research and development, production and manufacturing of solar products, and then we deploy them in various applications in various markets around the world. We've got an annual turnover of just under $3 billion US and about 10,000 employees globally. So a view into what those products look like. If you were a residential customer, this would be what a typical system looks like on a nice house. If you were a university, this is a net zero campus at the University of California, Davis. So no CO2, net, they're a net zero campus. The rooftops there are covered with PV, and so are the the car parks themselves. And then that's a power plant. It looks rather benign as it sits there, and there's a good reason for that. We can site right next to water sources, and you see a river that's the Sacramento Delta in California, and the power plant is being built proximate to a water source, and that just gives you an idea of how simple it is to site and place anywhere. Okay, so transitioning from who we are and what we do, talk a little bit about the circular economy and our approach. So what we did was a 5-step approach. Very simply, we wanted to get inspiration from the MacArthur Foundation, so we went online, got some research material, and started learning for ourselves. Then we wanted to focus on what our customers value most. And so we focused on our products. What kind of products do they care about? What can we do to produce those products? And then we moved to the materials. Look at the bill of materials of the product themselves and make them as beneficial as possible by intent and by design. And then we took our processes. How do we enable the entire company to think in a circular economic model and think about the processes that underpin building for circular economy? And then last but not least, focus on cycles of learning. And that's a basic premise of any product-driven company. You have to learn from your ongoing efforts, and we do that on a continuous basis. So, as I mentioned, inspiration. We've been using the MacArthur Foundation and the resources online to educate our people, and it's very good material. It helps us get everybody the message, and everybody gets the theoretical underpinnings, and then they can be inspired to figure out how to apply that to their own work. When we focused on our products, the first thing we did was say, okay, what's the toughest, most rigorous standard we can find out there? And that's the Cradle to Cradle Product Innovation Institute helped us get Cradle to Cradle certified. Very proud to announce that our factory in Mexico is producing only Cradle to Cradle certified panels. And now our factory in France yesterday got their certification, and we announced that yesterday. So 2 regions down, Asia will be next, and then we'll be able to produce Cradle to Cradle products globally. Why Cradle to Cradle? This is what our customers care about. If you looked at the Fortune 50, 88% of them have stated leadership in energy and efficiency design, lead intention in their sustainability reports or other public statements, 88%. So the number one thing that they can do to achieve LEED certification is invest in renewable energy, and Cradle to Cradle certified products help get them even more points on their way towards LEED certification. Now, LEED certification is not just a means to an end. It's also a way to run a more efficient, more effective, more cost-beneficial building or facility. So it's very much in our interest, very much in their interest, to have cradle-to-cradle products at the heart of what we do. Then we looked at our materials. So we said, okay, cradle-to-cradle products in a renewable energy company is outstanding, but what else can we do? So we pushed ourselves and we said, let's make all of our own factories LEED certified. So we're in the process of that. We're well on our way. And so our solar cell factories were first. Our panel factories are next. Then we went after cradle-to-cradle certification. I already talked about that. And then last but not least, we said, if we want to become triple certified at every factory, how do we go for zero waste to landfill? So our Mexico facility was the first one to get their zero waste to landfill certification. And now you've got a really good production environment that has everything done to the highest standards that you can find. and the people are incredibly motivated and inspired by these triple certifications. So taking a step further, this is a familiar diagram for everybody, the butterfly diagram. We operate almost exclusively on the technical side, but the first thing we did when we stepped back and we got inspiration around the circular economy, we said, what can we do as our first order effect? The first thing we did was take a PV panel from 25 years of useful life and extended it to 40 years. And what that means is we had to make different process and material choices to make a product last even longer. And lasting even longer, of course, means we're using less energy, less resources, and the product itself is more beneficial. It produces more energy over its lifetime, and we share that benefit with our customers. The second thing we did was we said, if you're going to build a power plant like that one that's ground-mounted near the Sacramento Delta, you want it to be super easy and modular to operate and maintain. Very simple to take a panel out and replace it if something happened to it. Very easy to upgrade and maintain, very easy to monitor. So super simple on the second loop, which is the maintenance loop. Third, we said if something goes wrong and we have to do something and take a product out of service, what can we do with it? Can we reuse it? That's the number one paradigm. Or can we recycle it? And greater than 97% of the bill of materials of our products are recyclable. That's not our aim. We want it to last 40 years or more. But if it comes back to us, which, Walter, we do have producer responsibility. We take back everything we produce, and we budget for that up front. When we take it back, we own it. We either redeploy it or we recycle it. And then last but not least, we want to make sure that there's nothing going to the landfill. Even if something comes back in a loop, it never ends up in a landfill, not at the point of manufacture or the point of recycling. Last, we said, okay, those are all the right things to do from a product standpoint. What can we do to our processes? So we started going a bit further. We took inspiration from the Cradle to Cradle group and went further with upcycling. So now upcycling is part of our innovation stage gate process. If you've ever developed a product in a company, there's always a stage gate process. How do you go from concept to production? In our stage gate process, our innovation teams, our R&D people, are now responsible for not only making their products more beneficial, but they're also responsible for their negative impacts and reducing those impacts as well. So they're responsible for energy, waste, and water, knowing explicitly what those dimensions of their products are and how to design them out each time they do a new product revision. So what else can we do? We looked further. I don't expect you to memorize this, but if you go from sand to delivered electrons, that's the entire value chain on the left. It's polysilicon, ingot, wafer cells, panels, and systems. That's how you build solar electricity at scale in power plants. So what we've started to do is baseline all of our loops and figure out where we have leakage, and then we're going to close those loops. So we know some areas in the upstream, in the ingot and wafer processing. We're working very diligently with green chemistry to try to figure out how to close those loops and reuse the material that's processing waste and reintroduce it as raw materials. The next thing we did was we had to adapt our business models. If you make a product last longer, how do you make more money? Well, one thing you can do is own the asset yourself. Sell energy as a service. So we took the first bullet there. It's called 8.3. Very happily, it just went public last week. We carved out a subdivision within our company. We take power plants and put it into what's called a yield co, which means we own the asset. We benefit from a long product life. It reduces the energy cost. It makes our bondholders and our dividend holders happy. They get to get predictable returns over the life of the product. And then, if we've done our job, there's a higher residual value at the end, and we can enjoy that upside later on. And then energy as a service. If you think about any one of your companies, we could immediately save you money day one by deploying solar energy. You wouldn't have to have any money up front. There are lease models that allow you to do a power purchase agreement and jump right in with renewables without a penny out of your pocket. So what does it look like when you have a life cycle analysis? This is what a power plant looks like at very large scale. This is 8 square miles, 579 megawatts in Southern California. Now, what happens at this facility, this power plant, we calculated all of the CO2 embedded from all of the fossil fuels that were used to make every panel. There's 1.7 million panels, and all the steel and all the transportation and everything that goes into it completely, and the entire thing pays back in less than 9 months, and you get the next 40 years for free from a CO2 standpoint, not economically. We're not giving them away. Okay? Now, from a CO2 standpoint, it uses 10 to 12 grams of CO2 equivalent for each kilowatt hour produced. That's in world-class territory. That's on par with a nuclear power plant. However, it's a little bit easier to deal with than a nuclear power plant. Now, by contrast, on a fossil fuel basis, the same calculations for a coal plant, 1,150 grams of CO2 equivalent for every kilowatt hour produced. Imagine that. Or natural gas, if you think that's the answer, 600. Okay. If you're a commercial customer, or you're a university, or you're anybody that has an asset like a building or a parking lot, we can immediately start saving typical customers about 30% on their energy bill straight out of the box. So economic parity has not only been achieved, it's been blown through, and the savings are real. So renewables are not just for the tree-hugging liberal, they're for the hard-boiled capitalist that wants to save money immediately. And 1 megawatt of solar, by the way, reduces CO2 by about 1,200 metric tons per year per site. Okay? So bring it all together, get inspiration, focus on what your customers want, deal with your products and your materials, deeply understand them, understand your processes, and continue to iterate and learn as you go forward. And thank you very much.